Alright, so I guess I'll get as the last few more kind of trickle in. So this is the workshop on using CodePush with Ionic 2 to kind of have a hot push across the developer life cycle. I'm Evan Schultz. I spoke yesterday, and I'm here with BERTRAND. So for those of you that are trying to kind of follow along, if you have issues, BERTRAND will be able to help out, and also feel free to ask questions. So as I'm going through this, I'll be a bit like kind of like live coding with the opportunity to follow along, and hopefully I'll be able to kind of get through the entirety of the application. So a few of the things that I'll be kind of going over for the next hour or so is going over kind of like the prereqs for that you should already have kind of installed, a few resources that you can link to help out, covering a bit of Ionic 2 and CodePush, and then kind of what you have to do to get CodePush working within your applications, and then sort of exploring the CodePush sync API and how that works with kind of managing different deployments. This kind of, in my opinion, is just kind of starting to scratch the surface of what is possible with CodePush, but hopefully it can kind of give you some insight into what is possible. So, kind of the prereqs, if you want to try and follow along, it's kind of like node, git, the CodePush command line tools, the Ionic 2 command line tools. Right now, what I'll be doing is doing a demo with Xcode and the iOS emulator, but BERTRAND was saying that he tried this on Android last night. So for people who are on Windows and are trying to do this with Android, hopefully it should work. I haven't tried it myself yet, but
it works. Just wave me over if you're having issues.
Yes. So the slides are available here, and then also the final application that we'll be building out is also GitHub/Wrangle PG Days CodePush demo. And so for people who maybe want to see what each step is going, there's a PR here that kind of has each commit along the way. So if you kind of fall behind or want to see what's going on, you can use this as a reference. Also, a lot of the code that I'm doing, there is a gist here at this link here that will go through, and these are basically the commands that you have to kind of like do to follow along with your slides. So if you want to pull up this link in a tab, you get. If you don't want to say try and write out the code by hand along with me, you can just go there and copy and paste as we go through. So Ionic 2 is kind of the new version of Ionic that is using Angular 2. It works well with PhoneGap and KARERANGABO, and it provides a lot of nice kind of like UIs and widgets and components for building out your mobile apps. In this workshop, we kind of we won't be going too much into depth of Ionic 2. It's just kind of a framework just to kind of show off the CodePush aspect. So this won't be too much of a deep dive into Ionic 2. However, if you have not had a chance to install Ionic 2 yet, do a npm install global Ionic at beta. If you haven't already installed the Cordova command line tools, npm install -g Cordova. Then if you're kind of trying to follow along is kind of after the command line tools are installed, you can use the Ionic command line to start a new project. And what we're doing here with like the --v2, we're telling the command line tools that we want to use version 2 of the framework and not version 1. And then the --ts is to say that we want to use TypeScript and not ES6. And then let's give this a try and see how well. And hopefully npm install will not choke on everyone here. Seems like it's being fairly fast.
While that runs, if anybody needs help catching up and getting started, just put your hands up in the air.
Yeah, and usually the npm install will probably take a minute or two. So once this is done, I'll move on. And then if anyone is having an issue or question, yeah, just feel free to raise.
Download.
Yeah. And so hopefully by the time I'm done, then everyone else will also be done. I guess as I'm waiting for the npm install to finish, kind of a quick look at kind of the final app that I'll be looking to build out is this is kind of our starting point, having the ability to kind of hit sync. Saying it's been rolled back. Eventually, the screen here will be fleshed out with kind of the ability to select the deployment that you want and different versions. So let's just see how npm install is going. Just about there. So once that has finished running, is just to kind of verify that things are kind of playing the way that we expect. Just quickly change into the directory, PG Days Workshop, Ionic serve, and just verify that it's loading up in the browser. And so kind of, are most people at this point yet, or?
That's good.
Not yet?
Some of you may see tabs at the bottom in your browsers. That's just fine too.
Yeah, because with Ionic, kind of depending on like the browser and OS and device that it's on, its styling will try and reflect the data environment for that. So when it's being run in the browser, at least in Chrome, those tabs will be across the top. When I emulate it on the iOS, it'll put those bars towards the bottom. So, yeah, so that's kind of like the basics of getting like the basic like tab-based project available for Ionic 2. They also have a few other starter templates for like complex lists and slide bars and whatnot. But the next part that we'll kind of go over is CodePush. So CodePush is made by Microsoft, and it's kind of enables to do a hot push to devices that have your application installed. There's a bunch of really cool features that it has, like being able to have multiple deployments, being able to roll out a change to say 25% of your users see the install stats. There's quite a bit that it can do, although for this workshop we'll mostly be focusing on the sync API within your Cordova app, and also a few of the basic uses of the command line tools. So if you haven't installed the command line tools, npm install -g CodePush CLI, and then once that is done, do CodePush register, and this should kind of actually prompt you to, yeah, I'm already logged in on this machine, but if you don't have a CodePush account yet, it should take you to a page to create an account, and you'll be able to look at either with like your Azure account, GitHub. There's a few options that it will let you create a account with, and that should only take a minute or two. And then once you have completed the registration process, the next step that you have to do is create an application for CodePush. So from the command prompt, CodePush app add, and then give your application a name, and that will be tied into your account. For most of the examples, actually for all of the examples, if you're kind of like doing the PG Dave's demo, and just to kind of show what's a CodePush app add. Is when you kind of do app add, what you'll do is this will create an application under your account, and these keys here are keys that you'll want to keep a note of, because these are the keys that will be going into your config, and or with the various SDK calls within CodePush, you can provide a key parameter to select the configuration. Once you've kind of created the application, you want to do a Ionic add, add the Cordova CodePush plugin to your application. So that is Ionic plugin add. I can make this a bit larger if that would make it easier for people. Just so that it's not at the bottom of the screen in the site, but Ionic plugin add Cordova plugin CodePush app latest. And the other aspect that we'll want to do is, since we are using the TypeScript version of this Ionic 2 project, we'll need to install typings and also the type definition for CodePush. Typings 1.0 has some breaking changes right now with how it deals with ambient dependencies. So just to kind of make everyone's life a bit easier, if you don't have typings installed, install it at version 0.x. And then once typings is installed, we'll want to install the typings for CodePush. And to kind of get your application kind of talking with CodePush, there's a fairly minimal amount of configuration that you have to do. There's a few things that you have to add to your config.xml. The first thing that you have to add is kind of under the platform spot. So if you're using iOS, this will go under your platform equals iOS. If you're trying to do this for Android, this will go under your the Android platform. So over in the config.xml, your platform iOS, and this deployment key here, when you had created the application, you see staging and a key. This is the key that you'll want to copy and paste and replace it here. And if you kind of forget what those keys are, you can do CodePush app ls to see the list of applications that you've created with CodePush. And the one I actually want to work with here is CodePush deployment. And then CodePush deployment ls, the application name -k. And this will list you all of the deployments that you have for that application, the keys that you have for it, and then also being able to kind of see how many people have it installed, how long it's updated, if it's been active or inactive. And this is already there by default in your config.xml. We just want to ensure that we either have access origin equals star, or if you don't want to have things be that whitelisted and want to be specific to only allowing stuff to CodePush, you would add these to your config.xml. However, this origin there is already there by default. And then one of the last things that we have to do is in the index.html is just adding this tag here, and this is just from the CodePush documentation. It's in the index.html under www. Just copy and paste this, and this just allows the content security policy to work with a CodePush. And at this point, your application is now ready to start talking and integrating with the CodePush services. So as we're building out this application, we're going to create a settings tab within the application that will show off kind of being able to sync, and then building this out to show checking for updates, syncing, being able to select production and staging, and building out a few features along the way. So over under app, pages, tabs.html, I'm just going to change this to say settings, and I'm going to change the icon from pulse to cog because that's a bit more of a setting type thing. And it doesn't really matter where this actually goes. I just figured for the sake of this demo, whenever the app restarts, I just want to start off on the screen that we're working with. And to start kind of building out the start of the functionality on our settings tab, is we want to kind of create a button that will have our check for updates and a button to be able to do a sync. So for people that haven't been exposed to Angular 2 yet, they've changed quite a bit of how you handle the templates in that. So when you have kind of like the round brackets click, this is, if you're used to Angular 1, this is what ng click used to be. So basically any event is the round brackets, and then the square braces is if you're trying to do binding to a property on the class. So what we're saying here is when we click on this, we want to invoke a method called check for update. And here, when we click it, we want to call sync. However, we want to disable it if there's no update available. So kind of over in our application, page 1, I'm just going to kind of replace all of this content with what we had there. And then the next step that we have to do is make a few changes to the backing class. So with Angular 2, all other components is kind of the combination of kind of a at, well with Ionic it's an at page and a backing class. And at page with Ionic 2 kind of sets up all sorts of like providers and configuration things for you, so you don't have to kind of do it yourself on every page. So for being able to check for a update, one thing that we have to do right now is, since CodePush is kind of living outside of like what Angular considers its zone, we have to let Angular know when to trigger its change detection. If this was to be, say, a full-scale like application, we'd probably abstract CodePush off into an Angular service and have that deal with triggering the change detection for us, and not having to be doing that here. But just for the sake of this application, we're going to kind of be handling that here. And for those of you who are not familiar with TypeScript, when you're passing in a property in the constructor, if you put the keyword private there, that is kind of the same as doing, say, appRef, and then this.appRef equals appRef. By putting the private there, it just kind of is a bit of a shorthand for being able to do that. And since our sync button is only going to be enabled if there is an update available, we'll provide that in our class. And then our click handler is calling this check for update. And right now you'll see that kind of things that are complaining that I don't know what CodePush is. And that's because this is kind of thing available on the Windows global object. So what you want to do is, since we installed the typings for CodePush, at the top of the class we just declare CodePush as CodePush Cordova plugin, and then this will start to give us the auto-complete for CodePush and tell us the things that we can do. And with the CodePush check for update, the result object is basically the package of any updates that are currently available on the server. And in this case right now, we only care if it's not null. If it's not null, then there is an update available. If it is null, there is no update there. And just so Angular knows how to detect that this operation is completed, we're doing a appRef.tick. Then the last piece before we kind of see this running in the application is hooking up our sync handler. And there's a few options that you can do with sync. But for the time being, I'm going to keep it pretty straightforward. This first parameter is a callback that will be continually run during the sync process. We'll explore this a bit more later on. Update dialog true just tells CodePush that if there is a update available, to prompt the user to install it. Install mode, just to kind of speed things along, we're setting it to immediate. So once the update has been applied, your application will restart. There's other options where you can have it on next restart. So if the user closes the application, it'll be applied then. Or on next resume, so if the application goes to sleep and restarts, then it will be applied then. But just so we aren't having to mess around with closing applications in our simulator, I'm going to leave it at immediate for the time being. this is there. I'm gonna kind of for the first step, I'm just gonna do Ionic emulate to get this onto the simulator, and then after this, I'll be showing how to do Ionic build, and then the CodePush push to show the hot updates. So now my resolution is all weird, so this is now looking kind of massive. But you can do a check for update. And right now, since all my current, so for most of you that have not done a deploy yet, there should be no update available. However, I've been using this kind of same API key while working on things. So I do have different deployments available right now. If I do an install, you'll see kind of what the final version of the application that we'll be working towards. So this is kind of the end result that we'll have. And kind of the reason why I have this here is because I've been playing around with this all day. But for most of you, after you hit check for update, the sync should still be disabled because you haven't done any deployments yet. So with that in mind, let's kind of do our first build and deploy. And this is pretty easy. All you have to do is do a Ionic build. This will compile your application and deal with like the SAS and transpiling your TypeScript. And then to do the deploy, it is CodePush, release Cordova, the application that you want to deploy, the platform that you want to deploy it to, and if you don't provide a destination, it'll go to staging by default, or you can do -d staging, and you can also provide a description if you want. That's trying to do too much at once in one command. But like -d staging will push it off to And also, another thing to kind of keep in mind is that if you try and deploy the same application twice, what CodePush will do is kind of compare what you're uploading with what's currently there, and it will warn you that the uploaded package is identical to what is currently there. So now that we actually have a update available, actually in this case it's now viewing this application as the same version, so that's why we're not seeing any changes. So let's start kind of adding a few more features to our screen. So the first thing that I want to do is kind of create a status field just to kind of inform the user what is going on. So for that, I'm going to be using the Ionic row to create a row on the screen, and then the Ionic columns to just to help with the layout. So back in our page1.html, I'm going to add the status field here, and then since this is TypeScript, we want to define status as a string, and I'm going to set it to empty. So I'm going to add a processing field so we can disable the button while it's doing this check. And basically in our check for update, the changes that we're going to do is at the start set the is processing to true, which will disable the button, set the status to like checking, and then basically look for the result to see if there is an update available or not. And to kind of have this button be disabled, in our template on the check for update button, we'll add the disabled with the square brackets to kind of just say that it's being bound to a property of is processing. And instead of doing Ionic emulate to get this onto our device, I should have to kind of push it up with the CodePush. So doing a Ionic build first, and then CodePush, release KARERANGABO, again app name, platform, and then the staging. So now we need to do a check for update. Our sync button is now enabled. We can install it. And now that we've done the sync, we now see that our status field is there. I can hit check for update, and we're now saying it's up to a date. So even though this is all currently on our own device right now, had this been an application in the App Store that's been deployed to all of your users, this is a way that you can kind of get those changes out without having to go through the whole App Store approval flow. So, kind of with CodePush, you can have multiple deployments. The default ones that it creates for you is staging and production. You can create as many as you want. At Rango, we've been experimenting with kind of automatically creating deployments for each PR and managing things that way. So what we want to do right now is adding a feature to our screen where we can switch between staging and production kind of on the fly within our application. So we're using the Angular 2 engine model just to have the two-way binding to deployment, and using the Ion radio button to allow us to switch between the versions. So I'm just going to add kind of the start of this list to just above where we have the status field, and you'll want to replace this value here with your appropriate keys. And again, if you forget what those keys were, CodePush deployment ls, the name of your app -k, and it will show you what the keys are. So for this application, I'm going to replace staging with what is here, and production with this key here. And then the next thing that we'll want to do is like pass this deployment key into our callback handlers for check for updates and sync deployment. So in our template, where we have our buttons here, we'll pass in the deployment key here and here. also want to do is then pass in these keys into check for update. So with the CodePush.check for update, this is the success handler for if there is a update. There is a optional error handler where if there's an error trying to connect to the server. We aren't going to cover that right now. And then there's finally a optional third parameter that is the key. If you're passing in a null or undefined key, what it will do is pick up the key that you have in your config.xml. However, if you specify the key, it will use that key instead. And then with the sync method, you can, we're going to add key as an argument here. And then how we define the deployment that we want to sync with is on this options object here, there is a optional deployment key property. Make sure I'm spelling that right. And yeah, I've already covered the check for update. So, kind of with this now, I am pushing up these changes to our staging. Check for an update, and then sync up our most recent version. And now you can see that we have the ability to select staging or production and then sync in between the two. And right now, if I try and sync with staging, it's going to think it's up to date. And right now, I have a kind of, so in both of these, yeah, so with production, it's saying that there is a update available because earlier on today I had the full application there, but I can now jump back to the current one that we're working on, fall back to what's on staging, and then if you're like working with like QAs and devs and people that need to pull down versions of your application quickly, this can really smooth out that flow where you're having to have this lengthy build and deploy process. It's much easier for your testers to get the versions that they need. So there's also a way to kind of get the details of CodePush of what your current locally installed package is. And it has properties like app version, description, label. There's a few other properties that it can have, including like last install time and who published it. But what we're going to do now is basically this list header and these list items here. I'm going to add them to this existing Ion list that we have up here. And to kind of get access to the current package, what we have to do is first is we'll need to import platform from Ionic Angular, because what we want is after our component is created, we want to kind of get the current package. However, if you're not waiting for the platform to be ready, then Ionic will complain that CodePush is not defined. And the reason why we're not getting that error on our other buttons right now is kind of just by fluke, because we're waiting for a user interaction to call CodePush. Where with this is happening automatically when this component loads. So we do want to ensure that the platform is prepared. So up at the top where we have our import page from Angular, freaking platform. And if you're new to kind of like the Angular 2 dependency injection, especially if you're using TypeScript, it will be looking things up by type. So what we're doing is we're importing the type from Ionic Angular, and then what Angular will do is see what type this is, and then take care of the dependency injection for us. And then also, I'm not sure how many people are familiar with like ES6 or TypeScript and like say the fat arrows, but that is just kind of a short way of kind of doing an anonymous function. And the next thing that we'll have to do is define a property on our class called currentPackage. And currentPackage is of type I local package. And since this is TypeScript, you can go and have a peek at the definition and see all of the properties that are available with it. So now, next time that we say deploy and sync our application, it will go fetch the current package and populate these details here. I'm going to add a few more features before doing our next sync, just to ensure I can cover everything that I want. Though, are there any questions at this point? So, actually, this is now actually going to get me to kind of deploying multiple versions. So, yeah, so actually in this case, I'm actually going to deploy this to staging and then showing how to push this off to production. So again, Ionic build, release, app name. I'm adding a description to say deployment select. And then to be able to kind of push a change from one environment to another, CodePush provides the promote command, which promote app name, the source, and then the destination. Technically, we could have done CodePush release. We could have specified production here. However, the case that you could run into if you're to do build and then pushing to production is that you aren't absolutely guaranteed that you're pushing the same package. Where when you're doing a promote from staging to production, it's the exact same package. You're not building it again, and you're going to be ensured that what was on staging will now be in your production. So I'm just going to select our staging. Do the sync. And now we have our package details. Our description is deployment select. However, if I try and switch to production right now, it's going to say it's up to date, and that's because I did the promote staging to production. As far as CodePush is concerned, this is the exact same code base, so there's no reason to do a sync. So if you're following along, I'm just going to ensure that we're kind of staying on production right now. And now I'm going to do a very minor change just to like demonstrate being able that you can have two different versions that you can kind of sync between. So on our page 1, going down to where we're handling our sync is we're going to add basically a attribute secondary. So with Ionic, there's like secondary, danger, outline, various properties that you can add to a button that will change the color, and this will make it green. And now we're going to do another build and deploy. And for like, say, a normal like dev life cycle, you'd probably just keep doing a Ionic emulate to have it on your phone instead of having to do this like release every single time. But the point is that if this was an application that was actually installed on devices through the App Store, these are ways of pushing those changes out. So it thinks that the production is up to date. If I switch back to staging, I'm not seeing that there is an update available. I'll hit sync, and we can now see that our app has the description of a color change, a new label, and then this button is now green. And if I switch back to production and sync, this will go back to the production version of the application. And that is back to being blue. And finally, I'm just going to push this change up to our production again. Before we start adding a few more features. So, kind of with like CodePush.sync, like the CodePush API, there's things for git package, install package, restart application. There's a whole bunch of things that you can do if you want really fine-grained control. However, CodePush.sync will kind of coordinate a lot of this for you and just make your life a lot simpler. So in kind of the sync callback, you'll have a sync status enum being passed in, which will tell you if it's up to date, installed, ignored, and whatnot. So what we want to do is down where we have our sync, what we had as null before, going to have it use a sync handler. And as part of this handler, we're just going to kind of be updating the status field to give us a bit more details as we're installing the application. Again, if you're trying to follow along, there is the gist that has the kind of copy-paste things if you're trying to kind of keep up. But I know I have to go a little bit faster through a few of these things, and watching me type all this by hand just would not be that exciting. So all we're doing here is for each thing in our enum, we're updating the status. And again, since this is being run outside of the Anchor zone, doing the app ref.tick to ensure that the changes are being reflected. And then it also provides you the ability to see the progress of the download. So we have our sync callback, our sync options, and then the download progress, which will tell us the total number of bytes and how many bytes have been downloaded. So we kind of add this detail to our class. Again, TypeScript tends to be very picky about wanting to be explicit about things, so we have to define download progress as a property on our class and of this type. And within our sync, we now have our optional handler for handling the sync status update, and then the third option that we have is being able to track our download progress. And finally, add a bit of the details to our screen. So again, using the ion row to create the rows, having the column, and then with ion columm, there's like width like 25, 75, 50, 33, and so on. If you want to go and check the dots, it just makes kind of doing a bit of a grid based layout a bit easier. And I'll just add this after our sync buttons. And let's just do a so now that we've made those changes, just doing another Ionic build, and then although again, yeah, so it's complaining that the uploaded package is identical. That's because I forgot to do Ionic build first. And then I'm going to push this off to staging. So back in our application, I'm going to select the staging, the point that I want to sync. Check for an update. I see that an update is available. I'm going to do the sync. So we now see that we have a new version. If I try and do a sync, I haven't done any more deployments, however. Production, it now has a different version. So if I do a sync now, you'll see that the status is now reflecting we're waiting for user action. If I hit install, you'll see that the progress bar is going up, status downloading the package, and we now have the ability to kind of say, view the production version of our application, or be able to go back to just staging. And one thing that we're kind of working on at Rango, which isn't quite ready yet, is the ability to like list every single PR that you have for the application there, so that every time that you do a PR for a feature, being able to quickly test that on an actual device and not have to rely on the emulators or browsers. So basically, that's it for going through for the CodePush workshop. Is there any questions? All right. Thank you. I'm Evan. Bertrand is the one that's been like walking around and helping. And if you want to come up after and talk to me, that's fine. Thanks.